from Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. The China Expert Series is here to educate and celebrate mistakes made by foreign investors whilst doing business in China. It includes personal stories from the China experts on the challenges they've experienced in the market, how they've overcome them, and what pieces of advice they can share with those of you who are just starting out. My name is Christina Kohler-Coluccia, and I'm a Hong Kong-born European with over 20 years experience in helping foreign investors enter the China and Hong Kong market. My mission is to help foreign investors, leaders, entrepreneurs avoid the most common obstacles that they encounter along their China business journey for them to accelerate their profitability. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome back to another episode of our Thrive in China podcast. We are tweaking things and pivoting things a little bit with our China Expert Series. We wanted to do a little bit more of an internal conversation between us at Woodburn on the most frequently asked questions that our clients raise when they are entering both the China and Hong Kong market. In today's episode, we are going to look specifically at the top questions that are raised in relation to trademarks and the challenges that can occur when you are trying to register your brand assets in both China and Hong Kong. Before we get cracking on these questions, and just to mention, I've got Claire on here, my marketing guru at Woodburn, who is going to be interviewing me today. But before we start this topic, I want to raise a little bit why trademark registration is, for me, such a pivotal aspect to your market entry into the region. And these are personal case studies in terms of what has happened in my history and my career journey in China. If you ever listened to our first ever episode of Thrive in China, I was sharing my challenges as I was starting off my career in China. And one of those challenges was trademark registration. Trademark registration is always something that is put at the bottom of everybody's to-do list. It is something that people don't necessarily prioritize on. Whatever industry, whatever your sector in, this is something you need to prioritize. I know those of you that are in the consumer sector, where you have products that you're trying to sell, this will be a big priority for you because your brand assets are everywhere. But in reality, for those of you that are in the service sector, or those of you that are in manufacturing, or even you have no intention of selling into China, this tends to be not a priority at all. In my situation, being a corporate services firm, this was not a priority. About 4 to 5 years into working in China, we started the process of registering our brand assets. And I will never forget, it was the Labor Day holiday, May 1st. I was just chilling on my sofa, opened up my laptop to check emails, and lo and behold, our trademark hijacker infringer had emailed us to basically sending a cease and desist letter, if you will, saying, stop using your brand assets in China. The marks belong to me. And this was a complete shock. And I mean, talk about coincidence. Because the system in China is a first to file, he had literally filed 14 days prior to us. And we had to then really think about what our next step was going to be. We could approach him and say, we want to buy our brand assets from you. But then we had no idea what number he was going to throw out at us. And, you know, back then it was not so clear cut on how to evaluate the value on a brand asset. And we just didn't want to pay millions of renminbi to acquire our brand assets. We being a small, medium-sized company in China, that was not our intention. And we also didn't have the budget for it. So after a lot of evaluation, we decided to rebrand. This took 3 months out of my life, rebranding our entire website, all of our marketing materials, all of our service agreements, all of our collateral, notifying our clients of our company name change, just the work that was involved in rebranding was tremendous. And naturally, it took 3 months out of my time where I could not focus on growing the business. Now, this whole thing has come into also Woodburn, where we started our company 4 or 5 years ago from scratch. And we went through the same process of registering our trademark. I made sure, I learned my lesson. I made sure this was the highest of priorities. And it was the first action that we did was to find a domain name and a brand name where we could register the domain name and have everything unified. So we went through the process of registering all of our brand assets, and lo and behold, discovered that our design logo, which is a WB, standing for Woodburn, matches the design logo of Warner Brothers Studio. And Warner Brothers Studio had already registered the design mark, but this did not deter us from continuing because we fully knew the legalities surrounding this. Warner Brothers is in a completely different industry and sector to Woodburn. And so as a consequence, and after getting some secondary opinions from IP lawyers, we were confident that although we couldn't get our design logo registered, we knew we could continue marketing with that design logo because of the difference in industries and sectors that we were in. So I have very personal stories about this. I don't want to say as far I had trauma, but it is something that has really pushed me to encourage others to make sure that their brand assets are registered. And obviously, consumerism in China has grown. Through COVID, we have seen that brands have just boomed in the Chinese market, and particularly for them, even though your expansion to China might not be right now, but it might be coming in the next few years, take this as a priority to get these marks registered, that they are just done, right? That they are secured and you are protected for whatever point in time you want to get into the market. So these are my personal stories. I do want to touch on the most frequently asked questions around trademarks in China and Hong Kong. And I've got Claire who's going to kick it off with the discussion. And I also don't know if Claire has got questions on the case studies or not, but I will leave that open to her. But she's going to kick off then the Q&A.
Hello. Yeah, I guess the first question is going to be really how would I go about registering a trademark in China? It seems like quite a big area, and so yeah.
So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, can we do this ourselves, right? I think in certain countries in the Western world or in mainland Europe, there's like an online system that you could actually do the application yourself. This is not the case in China. So how would I go about doing it? First of all, evaluate what brand assets you want to register. You know, is there a design mark? So by design mark, I mean a logo, right? An actual design that you've created that represents your company. Do you have a word mark? Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is our word mark. And this is what we have registered. It's how you identify us. And it's everywhere in our marketing materials, our service agreements. So really identify what brand assets you're going to be using in country. So what are you going to utilize for your marketing, maybe even on your products? So by products, I also mean things like, I'm just thinking a little bit. I have my cup here. I love 852. This could be a logo. Are you going to register this as one design mark? So think about what's going to be used in market. Now, even when you're manufacturing in China and you are putting your logos, your brand assets on your products, even though you're outsourcing that manufacturing, your products are still in China. And even though they might be exported, they're made in China. And you still need to protect them then in China. So evaluate that, right? Evaluate what brand assets you're going to be using. I think the second step then is understanding the class system in terms of trademark registration. So there are 45 different classes, half of which are for products and half of which are for services. Evaluate what activities you're going to be doing in China, what products you're going to be selling in China, and identify what classes and subclasses you need to be registered in. talk to a trademark agent, talk to an IP lawyer, or just look at what you've done in your own home jurisdiction, right? If you're a UK company, my assumption is you would have registered in the UK. I hope you would have.
Yeah.
Utilize that as an example of the classes you've registered in and use that as a template then for China, right? Because it's a very similar system. I think the next step after that is understanding who's going to own it, right? You don't need to have a Chinese company own your trademark registrations in China. You can have your UK company, US company, your Hong Kong company own it, but know which company or individual is going to own these trademarks.
Okay.
So it's really these three things that you have to evaluate. The last thing that you have to do is hire a trademark agent to actually do the physical filing for you at the trademark office, whether that's in Hong Kong or China. You do have to sign a power of attorney to let the person do the actual physical application for you.
Okay. And you couldn't do that yourself? If you were there, I guess you could
I
do
mean,
it
if you're
yourself.
on the ground and you want to communicate with them directly, by all means, learn how to do it. I mean, the whole point of outsourcing it is that you avoid the administration stuff, right? I started off by saying trademark registrations are usually always at the bottom of everybody's list of priorities, meaning they don't even have time to do it remotely. So
Yeah.
do you have time to do it on the ground? By all means, do it, right?
Yeah.
I should probably highlight, and I don't like to highlight fees because every company is going to have a different set of fees on this. It really won't cost you an arm and a leg, a couple hundred US dollars for a registration. When you realize how much it is against the value of what that asset is going to bring you for your business in China, this is where I hope people realize you have to place this as a priority.
Yeah. And how long does this take? Like from the very beginnings of getting in touch with a provider to having it approved, I guess. What's the timeline?
So I mean, there's always this phase of contacting a trademark agent to the point of submission of documents, right? I think that always depends on you. How long do you sign? How long does it take you to sign a power of attorney and send it back? How long does it take you to decide on the classes, on the brand assets, who's going to be the owner? That's always up to you. If you do it
Yeah.
overnight, then it can be really fast. If you have many people that you have to discuss this with, then it can take longer. So from the point of submission, and it's different between Hong Kong and China. In Hong Kong, between 6 to 9 months, it's done.
Okay.
In China, I would probably say a little over a year. So between 12, 13 months. And there's a specific process along that route. One thing that I would highly recommend is that before you submit anything, do a quick trademark search. The whole point of the trademark search is to see whether there are any brand assets that are similar to yours in the classes that you're registering in, right?
Yeah.
So to give you an example, I couldn't do a trademark. I mean, I did do a trademark search when I got the hijacker took our things, but because he had registered 14 days prior to our submission, that hadn't been recorded in our search, right? That the
Okay.
timing was so short that it didn't pop up. And we weren't quick enough in our decision-making process to beat him out. And then with the Warner Brothers story, I knew that there was Warner Brothers, but I tried, right?
Yeah.
So there is a very similar mark, and because they were in a completely different industry and sector and yet still in the same class, I tried. And then it got rejected. And at least I tried, knowing that there was then a rejection, that I knew what action then to take. If you don't even try, you actually don't know. Now, generally, when you do a trademark search, your IP lawyer or your trademark agent will give you kind of a probability ratio of what success you're going to have to get that trademark registered. When we did the trademark search for Woodburn, my team was like, Christina, there's no way we're going to get accepted. And I was like, it's okay. Let's just try, right?
Yeah.
A couple hundred US dollars down the drain. It's just a couple hundred US dollars. At least we tried and we submitted it. Even though I knew the probability was going to be zero.
Yeah.
So the trademark search is really there for you to check. Why do I say that? Because when you start the registration process, you won't know until about 6 to 9 months in whether you've succeeded or not. And then you have to restart the whole process again.
Yeah. And I guess also the benefit of that is that no one else can take your design mark now. So you know that no one else can go and get that trademark
Absolutely.
because of Warner
Well,
Brothers.
because Warner Brothers, so nobody can take mine. It's too similar. And actually, there are a bunch of similar ones. So I think there are 3 or 4 very similar WB logos. I
Yeah.
say Warner Brothers because the Western world knows Warner Brothers, but there are about 3 others there. So there
Mhm.
are 4 very similar marks, which just emphasized more that we were going to get rejected, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to try again at a certain point, but I'll probably try at the point, when I see that the registration, because registrations are only valid for 10 years,
Okay. So
where then
after that 10 years, you
you
can
can
try again.
you can renew. Well, the Warner Brothers could be renewing, or I could try again to get in. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And so when you have got your trademark, how do you protect your rights around that? What would happen? So you've trademarked your word mark. What happens now? I don't know, someone starts using something very similar. How do
So,
you
yeah,
protect that?
I mean, I think that really comes down to whether you're monitoring. And I
Okay.
am not monitoring all the service providers out there and whether they're using Woodburn. With my old company, we never registered our design mark for the main reason that it was the Chinese character zhong, which is relevant to China. Okay. And we
Okay.
couldn't register it because you can't register geographical names. Okay.
Okay.
Um, we had a competitor who took the exact same logo, and we were navy blue and he made it red.
Ah,
And we
okay.
had no legal rights because we
You
couldn't
couldn't do
register it
anything.
ourselves. They couldn't register it either. It is open to usage by anybody, right? So there was nothing we could do. We're just grateful they didn't use the same coloring. We had at least a differentiation with that. And I guess they were clever enough to realize that. Otherwise, there would be no realization. But I think the key thing is you've got to monitor. You've got to. It's up to you to decide whether you want to monitor or not. It costs money to do it if you outsource it. I don't want to hire somebody in-house. That's all they do or all day is to research whether our mark is being used. I think for brands, it's more vital to do this type of monitoring because you are in a market where there are a lot of uh, counterfeit products, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know if people are going to be. So I'll give you an example. I had a client who made baby wraps. When you wrap your baby,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
those,
like
those
a
covers, right?
yes. Hmm.
So uh, that product in itself, it's not patented, right? Anybody can make these cloths, rectangle shaped, square shaped as you wish. What's going to differentiate you is the label, which has your brand asset, right? She had a
Yeah.
supplier who actually took the damaged goods with all the designs and everything, just cut the label off and sold it without any label, and had a Tmall shop and did it like that, right?
Hmm.
So of course there's a conflict of interest now because you've got the same products, same designs, one with a label, one without a label.
Yeah.
Um, and this is all about monitoring now and making sure that these people are not cheating on you and taking your defected products
Yeah.
and reselling them, right?
And but how would you enforce that? Would you have to go down
So
like
there
the
are
legal route?
companies out there that do this type of enforcement. So they do first of all the monitoring, and they also then do the enforcement. Now, I think the issue is it's not cheap to enforce, right? If you find that out, what is the next step? The next step is to raid. So you need police involved, and you need to go and raid the warehouse, the supplier, whomever,
Yeah.
and call the police and get that done. It
Yeah.
still costs
I
money.
guess I guess you have to weigh up the pros and cons of going down that.
Absolutely.
Like, is that investment to enforce that
Exactly. I mean,
worth
the question is, are they
the
damaging your brand name or not? right?
Yeah,
Are they
and that
damaging your product quality or not, right? How
yeah,
and what's the value of that damage to your business?
yeah. And I
Um,
guess when you're somebody like Warner Brothers, that's a lot easier to do than
well, they've got the
if you're
resources,
exactly
right?
a really
Than if you
smaller
are a
company.
woodburn who
Yeah,
I
you're
want to, I
yeah,
don't want to spend my money on it, right? I'd rather
no,
spend my money
no.
on other things.
But having everything in place and having that trademark in place
Exactly.
is really important
Exactly. Exactly.
in any case.
In any case.
Wow.
So
Okay. So
I think also just I'd love to give an example on because brands get it. I think most brands who are selling, they get the importance of trademark registration, trademark protection. I've noticed I've had to convince service providers and I've had to convince manufacturers in China to do this.
mhm.
The best case study I can offer is a client of mine who was purely manufacturing in China, had like over 100 odd suppliers, had a falling out with one of the suppliers, and this supplier, as a revenge tactic, registered their trademarks and their brand assets in China. As a follow-up to that, they then registered it also at the customs authorities, which is always a step people forget to do, is then registering at the customs authorities, which meant that when all of these registrations were done and finalized, the following export got halted at customs from a different supplier and was not allowed to leave the country because of the use of those trademarks illegally
Wow.
in the country, right? And it basically meant that all the suppliers that were exporting these goods for this brand in Europe the goods could not leave China.
It basically shut their business down. They
Completely shut their business down. So
wow.
those products that, I'll use this as an example, those products that were just a plain white cup and didn't have the logo or the brand assets on them, and the packaging didn't have it, they just actually then had blank cartons to export. They were fine, right? Those
Yep.
where the actual logo was on, um, they got halted. And so the client took the supplier to court for registration in bad faith, but then you have to prove that. How do you prove that? So you have to
Yeah.
show the contract with the supplier. You have to show that they terminated with the supplier for XYZ reasons. You have to get a lawyer. You have to go to court.
Yeah. And this all takes a lot of time and money, like
Three to
the
four,
resource.
I think it
Yeah.
was like 3 to 5 months where their business was halted,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So it's also doing the follow through, right? It's also doing that customs IP registration as well and making sure you get that done. Um,
And
so
is that a separate service or is that something that could be done in
it's a
the
separate
whole trademark?
service.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be done together with trademark search and trademark registration. You're looking at the CTMO office or the IP protection department in Hong Kong to verify and get it registered. The customs is a separate application that's with the customs authorities in China and Hong Kong. Hong Kong
Okay.
in
And you
China
would always do the trademark first. You would
have
always
to.
do that part first and then you do that afterwards.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Um, so this is just to show how important it is to get your brand assets registered. And the problem is, they basically were so shocked that this was happening. They're like, we're not even selling in China. Like all we're doing is manufacturing. It's being sold elsewhere, where our brand is of more value, right? Our brand has
Yeah.
no value in China. Nobody knows us. We're not marketing in China, nothing. The assumption is only if you're marketing in that country, then we have to register the trademark in that country.
Yeah.
But
But
actually, it's
actually
if you're doing anything in China, you need to
you need to
register.
do that. Yeah. And how common is it for like the hijacking of trademarks and like
So
it's
I
quite
don't have a
commonplace.
statistic, but I just want to highlight. So for background, Claire's from the UK. Claire, it's exactly like these random guys who purchase domain names, and they do it.
Oh, it's
They
so
make
annoying.
they make a business out of it,
Yeah.
right? They purchase these random domain names, hoping that then the brand comes to them, and then they can put a price on it,
Yeah.
right?
And it's just
They purchased
exactly the
it.
same.
They purchased it from GoDaddy for £20, and now they're going to resell it for 1,500. A domain
Yeah.
name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
But it's the
It's the same
same
concept, right?
situation.
You
Yeah.
have these people all over the world who are taking advantage because they know how to register a trademark, and because you haven't placed a priority on it, they're taking advantage of it. So how often does it happen? I think it happens pretty often anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I think one thing that foreign investors, though, criticize is that the Chinese government is not doing anything about it, which is wrong. They have now special IP courts where if you find that an infringer or hijacker has taken your brand, you can apply with these courts for a lawsuit. Of course,
Yeah.
you need proof of the whole bad faith application and all of that. IP lawyers will then defend your case and give you then suggestions on how far to take it and what kind of success rate you're going to have.
Yeah.
But the Chinese government is fully aware that they're going to lose people if they don't take care of this, right?
Yeah.
So they're building up this court system and judgment system to be able to handle that.
Yeah. Which just goes to show what a big business it is, the hijacking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are hundreds of thousands of registrations a year, if not more,
Yeah.
right? And of course, China wants this to be protected. This is also why, e-commerce platforms have been forced by law to implement processes within their operative platforms to verify brand owners and whether they've registered their trademarks before they can even open up a shop on the
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah.
The e-commerce platforms even have IP departments where you can call them with a hotline, and they are multilingual now, which is amazing. So you, as an English speaker, can call this hotline, get somebody who speaks English, and you can say, I've been monitoring, I found somebody who is selling a similar product, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, which is incredible that they've got these things in place now
Exactly,
to
and it's more
protect
advanced,
you.
right?
Yeah. And so with regards to the trademark, like the search before you go on to register, would you say, like, I say I was going to be investing in China, like when would you say that that's important to do? Like one of the very first steps?
So listen, I can't tell you when is the right thing. I think if you are a brand and you plan on becoming a global brand, you got to do it the minute you decide to be a global brand.
Yeah.
Don't do it at the point of entry. It might even be too late. And I have a cosmetics brand who, so talk about coincidence. He approached me, I believe it was September 21, and said, I'm ready to register my trademarks. However, I'm getting funding from my local government to support these registrations. Great. It took 6 months to get that funding.
And that
Right.
could be a really long time when other people
In
are
the
out there.
meantime, although he'd done no marketing campaigns, his brand, his cosmetics brand, was becoming more well known on a global scale. He had brand ambassadors around the world who started using his cosmetics brand and talking about it. It even came out in the Global Cosmetics magazine, an article on them. Lo and behold, 6 months later, it had been registered by a hijacker. A
Oh
simple
gosh.
individual had gone out and registered it.
Wow. It's just opportunists out there.
Oh,
So
absolutely, right? You
yeah.
read a magazine, or you might be traveling in that country, and all of a sudden you see the product and you're like, oh, I've never seen that in China. Huh, let me check,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And then you register it.
Yeah, because I'm guessing anyone could go register.
Anybody can go.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
first to file system, right? So anybody can go. Yeah. Can be an
wow,
individual, can be a company that registers it. And usually the hijackers are individuals.
yeah. And there's nothing at that point because it is first to file. It could literally be anyone. There's nothing in place to say you need to
No,
have, I don't know, like a company document or something from somewhere else.
nothing,
Anyone
nothing.
can do it.
Anyone
So
can
I could just decide today, actually, I'm going to go and register XYZ
XYZ.
company,
Yes.
and then I could go do it. I don't have to have any kind of
No,
anything behind me to prove that I am that company.
not at all. You could
Quite
register.
scary.
Okay, Starbucks is registered, but I'll even give you the example of Starbucks. If you decide tomorrow, I want to register the Starbucks name in Albania because
Yeah.
they're not there yet, you could do it.
Yeah. Anyone, there's nothing in
Anyone can
place.
do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this is why I'm so passionate about this, because your question is absolutely right. At what point do you think about registration, right? And I think a lot of small, medium-sized brands, um, or let me use the case study of having gone to the China Consumer Conference in Edinburgh. There were a lot of Scottish brands in there who are so interested in Chinese consumers, right? And their first port of call is getting Chinese students who are studying in Edinburgh to get familiar with their brand, which is great.
Yeah.
But if these Chinese consumers are going home and saying, listen, I found this fantastic brand, you should try it out. And one of those people then realizes you haven't even registered in China yet, why wouldn't they take advantage? If you are trying to attract Chinese consumers in your own home country, you should be registering your trademarks in China, because at some point that is going to go over there.
Yeah. I guess it's getting people to understand that actually you don't have to actually be in China to do this. You should be
Absolutely.
think this is a really important thing that you should be thinking about
Especially if
before.
Chinese consumers are your target market, right? And we know that now borders are open. The Chinese are traveling to the UK. Students are now studying abroad again. It's this whole flow now of activity, right? But it also doesn't mean that a British, oh, I'm going to stick on the UK example, a British student doesn't go and study in China and brings along products with them that they can't find in China, but then shows it to their friends who might be Chinese students, who then say, okay, I'm going to register it.
Yeah.
Anything can
And
happen, right?
yeah. These things will happen, and they
Yeah,
obviously do happen on a
exactly.
regular basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and so, I have seen brands who've not been able to register their English names because they've already been registered. They have decided strategically not to purchase or approach the infringers.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have gone the route of creating Chinese brand names for their products. So registering then a Chinese name for Chinese consumers,
Okay.
for their products, which also means then the packaging changes, right? Because then
Yeah,
it's
they have to
Chinese
change
brand
everything.
name.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, and I know this just through our conversations, that obviously, but I think it's an important one to note that actually the word mark and the design mark are separate, aren't they? So
Yes,
they could, that for that person you were just explaining there as an example, that their design mark could be okay, but actually they just need to change their
it's
word
the word
mark.
mark. Yes,
Yeah, but you
correct.
can use them together.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots. It's quite involved, and I don't think necessarily that everyone gives it quite
Importance and
the
value.
importance that's it that they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a trademark presentation on our roundtable, and one of my first slide on that roundtable is always how what is the value of your brand asset,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Place
so true. What value do you put on that?
Put a number on it,
Yeah.
right? You are a company probably in the third generation. Your grandfather started the business and he's created the name of the company. He's created the logo, design of the company, and you still haven't registered it in China. What do you do if somebody takes that?
Yeah. Because the thing is, it really is kind of priceless, isn't it? You
It
can't put
is.
a you need to make sure that you are
Imagine
covered
all of
and you're
that
safe.
effort, blood, and sweat it took to get people to know about you.
Yeah. And then someone just very easily
Takes it.
can just take it off of
Yeah.
you,
And
just like
so
that,
does it
really.
mean, and what I think also a really important message is that when these things happen, which they do, and they happen in every jurisdiction, for a lot of people, they're already negative about China. I think this is really important to say. There's a lot of negative media out there about China, the geopolitical situation, the human rights situation. I mean, there is negativeness about China everywhere. If um, somebody has taken it, that leaves an even worse taste in your mouth because it affects you now personally. And probably your first idea is forget China. I'm never going there.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. Yeah, you would be put off, I think.
You're totally put off. And now what? You're going to miss out on an opportunity. And this is I mean, it's your prerogative to say I'll miss out on the opportunity. I've got a bad taste in my mouth. Oh, the Chinese are rubbish. They're cheap. Quite frankly, it's your fault that you didn't get it registered.
Yeah, it's on you.
It's on you. It's not
Yeah.
on them. They just took advantage of an opportunity. It's on
Mm.
you that you didn't get it registered. You're the only one to blame if China was ever going to be something you were going to look at, right?
Yeah.
And also evaluate that opportunity for China. You're really going to do it because this first step left a bad taste in your mouth? If the idea is that your market share for China or your, the percentage of your business in China is going to be more than 50, 60%, what are you doing? Why are you not taking advantage of that? We all want to make money. like,
Mm.
and going into any jurisdiction, there are going to be roadblocks and obstacles. It's never an easy,
Yeah.
smooth journey, right?
No, it
But
doesn't. Any country, the same would
why,
apply. Yeah.
exactly. So why are you giving up on that, right? Just make sure it gets on your to-do list.
Yeah. It should be high up there.
It should be the first thing you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's it from questions for me. I think it feels quite thorough and that we've managed to touch on quite a lot there and hopefully
And
answer all the important questions.
and I hope we have answered people's questions and doubts, and we've shared case studies and experiences. And again, I think the takeaway I want people to have on this is that it's on you to register your brand assets wherever in the world you go. My expertise is China and Hong Kong, but if you decide to go to the US, this is also a priority. If you decide to go to India, it is a priority. Wherever you go in the world, saving your brand assets, protecting your brand assets is vital. And hopefully it's the number one thing you do on your checklist.
Yeah.
So I think we'll leave it there. And I hope people enjoyed this interaction on trademarks and trademark protection and trademark search. And I hope to see you at our following episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast and or the YouTube channel, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. Now, can Woodburn help you? I am offering a free 30-minute call where we discuss the obstacles you are encountering on your China business journey and how perhaps we can help accelerate your success. The link to my diary is in the show notes. I look forward to speaking with you.